The following is a presentation of the Six Arrows Radio Network.
On this episode, it's the Total Solar Eclipse Field Report and completing the build on the VHF-UHF Go Box. This is the Ham Radio 360 Field Radio Podcast. This show is brought to you by Chameleon Antenna, versatile, dependable, stealth, and built to last. Thank you for clicking and tuning in. I am your host, John Jacobs, W7DBO, Whiskey 7 Delta Bravo Oscar. If this is your first time listening, thank you for checking out the show. I'm a third-generation ham. I reside in Utah, married to a loving wife and 3 amazing children. This show is dedicated to all things amateur radio outside of the shack. It's your gear. It's ultra lightweight, MCOM, Aries, recreational, mobile, whatever it is, we cover it on this show. This show is part of the Ham Radio 360 family. Cale runs the 360 show that appears Tuesday before this show, and George and Jeremy are on the workbench on opposing Tuesdays. If you're just tuning into this podcast, give them a listen also on the Ham Radio 360 feed. Also, be sure to subscribe. I'm on Twitter and Facebook at Field Radio Pod and Field Radio Podcast. We're on the website at hamradio360.com. Click on the Field Radio tab. We have an ever-growing YouTube channel full of resources and information. Through the last few episodes, I've been discussing building my VHF-UHF Go Box for voice and digital communications. This box has been completed, and I've had 2 chances to get it out in the field and run some tests and see how it works. The first event was a Ketchikamosa 100K Ultra Run event, and this we ran voice through a remote repeater and also running FL Digi to send runner times back to net control. In the show notes, there are photos of this setup at this event. The second time I was able to get it out was this last week at the Total Solar Eclipse camping. So for this, we ran voice and APRS. So my overall impression of this build, once it's completed, is it is very quick to set up and very efficient. As I mentioned before in other episodes, I've always been frustrated a bit with the setup of my typical VHF-UHF box. I've gone through several iterations of briefcases, racks, cases, boxes, and I've never really seemed to settle in on what works for the type of field operations I do, mostly supporting events, ultra runs, bicycle events, and also just typical camping and field day operations. So I really appreciate and like this concept of having 2 separate boxes. Even when I had one radio box and I found myself putting the control head on the table, then the microphone on the table, then the speakers on the cable, I found myself quickly getting a disorganized mess. And so this organization of the 2 boxes makes everything very organized and professional. It also maximizes the desk space. I find that I only need now one smaller desk to be able to put the radio control head box. And also I've found that I appreciate the little things, the little extras I put into it, the USB lights, and also the MFJ clock on the lid. For a full review of activating this gear in the field twice, and also final pictures and explanation of all the components to go into it, make sure you check out the YouTube video that I prepared for this, and that'll be in the show notes. As I mentioned at the beginning, Chameleon Antenna is the sponsor of the Field Radio Podcast. Chameleon antennas are made with the finest material available. I mentioned for my birthday last month, I got the Chameleon Wyndham 40. This is a 40-20-10 meter dipole. Later in this episode, I will cover using this antenna for our solar QSO party. You can find them at chameleonantenna.com or our show notes page. This last Tuesday, August 21st, the United States experienced a rare total solar eclipse from coast to coast. Since we live in Utah, and our closest point to totality was in Idaho, this was too close for us not to go, and so we planned a family vacation around it. Not wanting to arrive in the area and be unsure of our location, we booked a 60 by 40 space in a farmer's alfalfa field on the corner of his pivot, above the line of totality. Our game plan for the radio equipment was using the VHF UHF Go box with the Kenwood D710. This would run voice to the local intertie repeaters, simplex, and also beacon APRS. We used a diamond dual band antenna on top of a Harbor Freight flagpole mast. We also brought up the ICOM VC V8000, and I was using this as voice operations to a more distant repeater in Pocatello, south of us. So we used an Arrow Yagi antenna, and this sat below the diamond antenna on that Harbor Freight flagpole mast. For HF operations, we actually had two ICOM 7200s. The first one I was using for WhisperNet with the Chameleon Wyndham 40 antenna. And then also my father, Larry, WA7ZBO, had his ICOM 7200 running voice off a dipole. The game plan for documenting the solar event, I had my Canon D40. I purchased solar filter paper, and so I 3D printed a lens cover that I could flip over the cover and flip it back so I would not lose it in the dark of totality. And then also had a spotting scope with a solar cover on top of it, and then a iPhone bracket, just for kicks to try and see if we can get a little closer shot of the sun. I had two GoPro cameras set up. One was on a tripod on the top of our truck, and then the other one I 3D printed a painter pole to GoPro camera adapter, and this we put up on a 16-foot pole to capture what we thought we would get was the darkness coming from the west. To round out the photography plan, I had a DJI Phantom 3 professional drone that I had turned on, warmed up, calibrated, and ready to go. So I launched that during totality and was able to get a high elevation 360-degree view of the sunset. Hearing of the Armageddon type warnings from our local media about the traffic, we decided to head up Saturday night, well ahead of what we anticipated would be the Sunday rush and the Monday rush. So that gave us all day Sunday to set up, and also I was able to run Whisper for reference. Since this was a new location for me, I wasn't quite sure what was the normal in that area, and so I was able to run Whisper to understand what is normal propagation in that area. Like I said, we booked with a farmer a 60-foot by 40-foot space. So when we arrived, we were not sure how strict that was going to be, how full they had booked out their alfalfa corner on the pivot. So we parked our trailers tight so we could fit into that space, but it turned out that the farmer did not book that many lots, and so there was plenty of space, and we were able to open things up with the Wyndham antenna. After setting up and getting ready Sunday, Monday was the big show, and due to traffic, we held off and avoided the Monday traffic, and we returned Tuesday, and we still caught a little bit of traffic, but not as bad as the 4 to 5 hour delays that we were hearing on the Monday traffic. For radio operations, we tuned into the Pocatello Amateur Radio Club that was running a 24-hour net. Now, Pocatello was not in the totality zone, but they were in the zone for massive traffic issues. So we checked into that net over long distance and then monitored any issues that we were hearing about that with traffic. We also monitored the Intermountain Intertie out of the Idaho Falls repeater. And this repeater intertie is repeaters tied between Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, Nevada, and Arizona. This is a great system if you're in the area or traveling through. And on that, there was no official net being run, but there was very active amateur radio operators that were traveling through the area, providing ad hoc traffic reports. And there also was one operator that was in a county EOC on Monday that was providing us information from their traffic cameras. Interestingly enough, we tried going to the Idaho Department of Transportation to view the traffic cameras, but it looks like they exceeded the bandwidth of their mapping system, but they were getting a billing error. So either the bill wasn't paid or they exceeded their bandwidth and their traffic camera system was shut down on the internet. For HF operations, we participated in the Solar QSO Party and HAMSci, and this is the science project that Virginia Tech and NASA are taking up to data capture and get propagation reports and logs, primarily from either user-submitted logs, the reverse beacon network, or the Whisper system. Our station was running Whisper, and our logs were uploaded that direction. We did conduct an informal science experiment with our logs, but it's hard to determine. We stayed on 40 meters listening through the event and before and after. Since this is not my home location, I'm not fully aware of what normal band conditions are. We ran Sunday through Monday to try and capture what is normal, but it's kind of hard to tell what you typically would understand more when you are operating from your home. I look forward to future QST articles. Apparently they'll be coming out this winter with some preliminary results, and throughout the couple years we'll be hearing more about this study. It was fun to participate and get the family involved in a little bit of science project. My father, WA7ZBO Larry, ran his IC 7200 on voice, chasing nets and QSOs. And as the story goes nationwide, it was the traffic issue returning. Cell phone in our area held because we weren't in that densely populated area, but I did hear from local amateur radio operators that Wyoming cell traffic was limited and other places cell traffic went down entirely. This is where the power of amateur radio comes in to provide traffic in informal nets and information through emergency communications. We had neighbors around us that had limited cell coverage in the area and limited information on traffic. They would come visit us because they saw our antennas and they knew we were doing something different, and they would come over and ask us for information on traffic. Reports nationwide are of other hams providing informal information, sharing, and intelligence on what was going on. If you have any specific information about what your local club or ARIES group did to help assist in this event, please contact me at john@hamradio360.com, that's JOHN, and let me know so we can feature this information more in depth on a later show. Like I mentioned, the neighbors around us, they saw us with all of our antennas, and they figured we had to be something official. And so all of our neighbors that rented camping places also came over and talked to us, and it became a great ambassador opportunity to explain to them what amateur radio is and also what the HamSci project was about, and just general information and being a good ambassador of the hobby. So it turns out our solar eclipse party we had turned out to be a little field day-esque station. It was a little bit of science, and it was a little bit of emergency communications. And it was also a chance to be ambassador for amateur radio. So it was a great event overall. As for the total eclipse, I was busy running cameras and drones. It was very interesting to note the temperature drop, and it was getting dark, but it wasn't like a clouds in the sky dark or a sunset dark. It was more of a eerie, this is not right dark. It was a strange lighting, the shadowing that we saw. We were in an alfalfa field corner, so we could feel the humidity starting to come up from the alfalfa on the ground. And it's really hard to describe the totality. Our language is limited in its vocabulary. You just cannot describe how amazing the event is, and to be able to actually visually stare at the sun and see the corona. The people around us, we recorded this on GoPro camera. There was cheering and there was just screaming. It was like an overload of visual sense. And so in the show notes, I provided some photos and some videos so you can kind of experience what we saw around us. But I am still amazed that we have the capability and we are smart enough to predict these type of events down to the second and the location of something where our ancestors from years ago would just be stunned and not really sure what happened or why it happened. To wrap this up, I thought it would be fun to bring my son on, who helped out on the radio, and kind of get his thoughts of what he thought about the eclipse. We're on the Field Radio podcast with a very special guest. His name is Keaton Jacobs, and he is my 7-year-old son. Say hi, Keaton.
Hi.
And so Keaton is our guest today because we did a very special event this last week with our family. We went up to Monte View, Idaho, to watch the solar eclipse of the sun, which was, we call it totality, right?
Yep.
So we got to see the entire sun get blocked out by the moon.
Yep.
So was the drive worth it to go up and see that?
Really, really worth it.
Really worth it, yes. And so Keaton, just so they know, you're 7 years old. What grade are you in?
Second.
Second grade. And after we did field day together, they might recognize a picture of you and I working in field day, you decided that you wanted to get your ham radio license.
Yep.
Yep, so that's something we're going to work on this winter, getting your license, huh?
Yep.
So what we did up there was we got ready for the eclipse. We went up really early. We went up 2 days early because we didn't want to get stuck in traffic. And where did we camp?
A farmer's alfalfa field.
Yeah, so we were on the edge of an alfalfa field, and it was really, really cool.
Yep.
And how many antennas do you think we had?
About 4 or 5.
Yeah, we had about 4 or 5 antennas. So we had a VHF, UHF, diamond antenna, and that's how we heard about traffic. And we could hear all the local amateur radio operators in the area talking.
Yep.
And we had another one so we could hear some radio operators far, far away.
Yep.
And then Grandpa had W7ZBO Larry. He had a big antenna too, huh?
Yep.
So he was trying to talk to his friend Gordo and a bunch of other people on HF bands, but we were conducting a science experiment. Do you want to tell them about that?
So we were doing a science experiment with NASA, with the radio waves and propagation.
Yeah, so we had our ICOM 7200 radio, which is the radio we like to take outdoors camping with us. And we had a Chameleon antenna that was above the trailer, huh? And we had it hooked up to a laptop. And what did we see on the laptop?
All the stations that can hear us and we can hear.
Yep. So we had WhisperLink running, and it was tracking the stations that we could hear and that they could hear us. And that's kind of how we participated in the experiment, huh?
Yep.
And who came over to see us? We were in our alfalfa field, but there was other people around.
Our neighbors visited us because they thought that we were pretty cool.
Yeah, we were the talk of our little Insta town. We had a lot of kids come over and talk to us about radio and amateur radio and what amateur radio was doing. And so, what was your favorite part of the eclipse?
The totality.
The totality part. When you could take your glasses off?
Yep.
Yep. And it got cold enough in the middle of the day that you even asked for a blanket, didn't you?
Yep.
Was that kind of weird that it got that cold that fast?
Yep.
Yeah. So, do you think we should do this again?
Yep.
When's the next one?
In 7 years.
In Texas.
Yeah.
So we're already planning on heading down there to do that one. So thank you very much, Keaton, for this little impromptu interview on the podcast.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Keaton. And yes, we did keep him up way past his bedtime to record that segment. I can tease with you that our family and Keaton and I are working on a video series that will be out this winter for younger youth to learn the information to pass the technician exam. It'll be written and narrated by Keaton. He has a YouTube channel that he does a lot of Minecraft and Roblox tutorials. And so this is going to be a great cross for him to record this series to help other children his age become amateur radio operators and also help him pass his first test. So we are excited to see that come up. And you can see in the show notes a link to a video that he made about the solar eclipse event. Now for our tips and tricks. Thank you to those who have submitted tips and tricks. This show came up fast after the eclipse trip, so I'll give those on the next show when I have more time to organize them. But however, George on the Workbench show reviewed the use of the WAGO connectors I reviewed last time. First, he corrected me on the name. It should be Vago. I guess my 3 weeks of high school German showed. But it's a great tip that he had was to throw a handful of those connectors in your Go tool bag. It's great for emergency electrical connections, so I grabbed a handful and threw them in my bag. Also, a quick tip is to make it the goal to avoid the terrible zip ties in your portable gear. Yes, they have a purpose in permanent installations such as racks, masts, and towers. However, in my opinion, they should be banned from portable operations. The last thing you want to do is in the field be poking around in your go box or under your dash in your vehicle with a pair of dikes to snip that precious cable, especially if you are stressed or cold and dark. Replace those zip ties with Velcro strips. The best kind have a built-in loop in the middle so you can secure them to the cable so they don't fall off. And you can get these at big box stores or on the Amazon affiliate link that I'll share in the show notes. As always, please submit your ideas to present on the show to John, that's John, at hamradio360.com. Lastly, for our training item, this is appropriate for what we just experienced when we traveled. It is emergency preparedness while on vacation. I hope you enjoy. Hello, this is John, W7DBO, with this training item on emergency preparedness while on vacation. Over the past few years, our family has worked hard to be prepared in our home and vehicles for an emergency or disaster. Food storage, water, portable power, radio gear, garden, emergency shelter, portable cooking, medical supplies, go bags, and personal protection. The issue becomes when we go on vacation using modes of travel other than our vehicles, for instance, planes, ships, and trains, we leave the protection we enjoy and expose ourselves to being back in a state of not being prepared. With travel restrictions, especially on airlines, your preparedness is reduced to a few pieces of luggage and less than a day of sustainability. In an event of a disaster, you will quickly become a victim and be in the need of immediate assistance. A few years ago, we went on a family vacation to Florida and experienced 2 tornadoes touching down north and south of us during a storm. So what are some steps we can do to mitigate this type of risk? The very essential items should be brought with us on the trip. These are your everyday carry items, or EDC. My EDC has a multi-tool, knife, HT with a spare battery, flashlight, survival kit, cell charger, and small medical kit. Due to the knives, this would have to be transported in checked baggage. When bringing an HT, is it a good idea to program in local repeaters, local Aries frequencies, and Skywarn frequencies? The Chirp program makes this an easy task to temporarily flash the radio for the trip and then back to normal when you return. Even though you are going to a tropical paradise, try to pack some external weather gear and durable clothing. You never know when your flight may be delayed or canceled in a cold weather city, or you may be exposed to adverse conditions during an unexpected change in weather. While it is not practical to pack extra water or food, once at your destination, purchase a case of water and basic food supply for your hotel room, rental car, or before boarding the cruise ship. The first item in any emergency that will be in short supply is water. Even if you do not use some of the water, a case is only a few dollars. Make sure you have apps like weather.com or AccuWeather added to your phone and enter your vacation spot as your primary location. You will then get weather and emergency alerts on your phone while there. Also, do some research to see if the county or state EOC, state highway department, or sheriff's offices have Twitter accounts. Follow those accounts by creating a specific list for the trip. Lastly, pack a portable weather radio that has a loud alert to inform you of a local issue. Keep alternate forms of government ID separate from your wallet in case of theft. If traveling with children, keep official copies of birth certificates. You may need these to get past an unfriendly TSA agent or prove custody of your children at a recovery center. Keep multiple copies of a photo of your family and photos of each individual person. You may need these to prove relationship and post at recovery centers. Make sure each family member has an emergency contact card on them. Some families at theme parks or parades will write the parent's cell phone number on the arm of the child. We keep taped to our children's car seats emergency information and any known allergies to assist first responders. Also, be sure to activate the emergency information mode on your cell phone. If you do not have that function, make sure your contact list has an ICE contact that is not with you. Share with a friend or family member not traveling with you travel plans, including flight info, rental car, plate, make, model, hotels you are staying at, and locations you plan to visit. Make a specific emergency communication plan for the trip. In conclusion, be aware of your new residence. Communicate with your family where your new rally points will be in a case of evacuation. Think through scenarios and find ways to mitigate these new situations. Research ahead of time and mark locations of local schools and church buildings. In a disaster, you can count on these locations being rally points of aid. Hopefully these ideas will help you on your next vacation in being prepared. This is John W7DBO with the training item. This will do it for this episode. Thank you, Keaton, for coming on the show. Thank you for your user feedback via email, Facebook, Twitter, and reviewing the show on iTunes. And thank you once again, Chameleon Antenna, for sponsoring this episode. As always, please send me your comments, feedback, and show ideas to John at hamradio360.com. 73.